Aloha. My name is Steve Goldrick, and I'm the current treasurer for the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Coquitlam. Today is an introduction to the Treasury accounting, so we will call that Accounting 101. The Assembly has a responsibility to ensure that contributions received are properly receipted, and satisfactory accounts kept of all receipts and disbursements. While the treasurer normally is the officer in charge of such a sacred obligation, this does not mean that other members are thereby relieved of all responsibility or are deprived of their right to access to details related to the current operation of the Assembly in all its aspects. The Spiritual Assembly, as an institution, has a responsibility for managing the local fund and other funds entrusted to it according to the principles of the faith and the requirements of the government, and to ensure that all monies entrusted to its care are fully and correctly accounted for. To do this, the Assembly elects a treasurer who is responsible to it for carrying out its decisions, acting on its behalf in handling the flow of funds, keeping accurate and up-to-date records of every transaction, and keeping the Assembly fully informed of the various matters related to the local and national funds, as well as other funds of the cause. The Assembly has a responsibility to be familiar with the contents of this handbook, to verify that the Treasurer is properly carrying out its directions, as well as regular responsibilities of that office. This is a contribution envelope. We have designed this envelope in both English and Farsi. What makes this envelope great is that it's designed to show the name of the feast, the date of the feast, the name of the individual who contributed, and if they're contributing in someone else's name or in memory of someone else. There's a check section, a cash section, fund allocation like local fund, national fund, World Center Endowment Fund, International Fund, International Collaboration Fund, Deputization, Wilmette, Chile, Shrine of Abdu'l Baha, or whether it's just for a fundraiser, Baha'i Council, or the Community Properties Fund. We even have a special place for pledges and special events. You can also check it for a receipt or no receipt. Let's take a look at filling out a real one so you can see how each area is utilized. As a treasurer, you'll receive funds in all kinds of envelopes, colored envelopes, envelopes with no names on them. And this is one we're going to demonstrate how you fill out one of these forms, but I'll also use one with my name, just so you have some idea of how it works. Now in this particular envelope, it just has cash and there's no name on it. So when we open that, we can see there's just a $150 bill. So for this, we'll say it's the feast for the Feast of Baha, which is Splendor. So we write the names at the top to begin with. And the date of that, I believe, was the 21st of March, 2023. Now, as there is no name on the envelope, we can't put a name here. So that's where we write in no name, because there's a section on our ledger sheet where we record who's contributed what and whether or not receipts should be given or not. So there's another section for no names. Here it's cash, so in order to make sure that there's no question in the future of any discrepancy in terms of the amount received, we always document the actual number of bills. So if it's 1050s, we write 1050. In this case, it's just one, and we put it under cash. So it's a $50 amount. And since there's no particular fund designated, we always put it under the local fund. So I've checked that off. And here, of course, on the bottom, we put no receipt, so we check that off. So we are not going to give a receipt for these funds, but it is recorded and documented that we have received those. And this is what will be checked by our auditor at the end of the year, comparing that to the actual ledger sheet of all funds received. Okay, so we're going to put that in the envelope because we now know what it is and when it was for. We'll put that aside and do one for me, Steve Goldrick. Okay, so in this particular case, we're going to put the Feast of Baha again. And although this is not for an actual contribution I've made, because I do mine online, I am going to just use it as a show for you. So as you can see here, it's for the Feast of Baha Splendor, and the date of the feast is in there. Now in this particular case, I've actually written a check. So the check number is number 50. So it's very important to put that up there because you're also going to put that on the deposit slip that you make when you do your deposit. So there's no question. So the check was for $500, but I also put some cash in there too. I put 120, so it's 1 times 20, plus 2 times 50, two $50 bills, plus 1 times a $10 bill, and 3 $5 bills, so 3 times 5. When we add all those together, so that's 100, 110, 125, plus 20 is $145. Not only does this verify what this amount is, it proves it, and should there be any question in the future of how much was contributed in what form, we have the proof here. It can never be challenged. Here I put my name, of course, because I'm making the contribution. And I've just decided to divide it up amongst various funds. Now we know that I do want a receipt for the end of the year for CRA. I've decided to give $200 to the local fund, so I'm going to put that here. $25 to the National Fund, so I put that there. World Center Endowment, another $25. So that's already $250. For the Shrine of Abdu'l Baha, another $250. And I also have $145 here, which I'm going to give to the Community Properties Fund. Now these amounts that we have here must be checked with the amount of cash and the check that we received. Now, when we receive a check, of course, you can pause it. When we receive a check, it's always stamped at the back so that it cannot be deposited into any other person's account. Now, as you can see, we now have two amounts of money that we've documented and placed in envelopes that are ready to be deposited. This is a deposit book. What's important here is that you put down this hard piece of cardboard before you stamp or write on the pages so that it won't follow through on every other page. And it's important to stamp each and every page for the deposits. So we're just going to proceed to fill out one of the deposit pages, and we're going to tear them out later because this is all fictitious. So no name here, it's cash. So it was 1 times 50. We put in the cash column. For any others, we put there. So in this particular case, there were actually contributed by Steve, 2 other 50. So this is actually 3. So that's 150. We had 120. We had 110. And we had 3 5s. So whatever I record here must match whatever envelopes I've receipted and prepared. So 3 times 5 is 15. We fill that out. 1 times 10 is 10. And so forth. And then we total that at the bottom under cash, which is $195. And we carry that on down as well. For checks, there was only 1 check received, and we know that that was for a $500 amount. So we put that in this column. We document the number of checks here, the check amount. And of course, if you have several, of course, you have to add those all up, and that would be the amount at the bottom. In this particular case, we're going to put the check number on the side here, and put my name, because the check is from me. And the amount goes on the right side of that. So you can see it's carried on down for the checks, it's carried on down for the cash, and then we total both of those together, which comes to $695 and signed by the treasurer. This is what you take to the bank to make your deposit for the feast or any fundraising event or any event where you've collected money. Okay, on to other things. One of the things I forgot to mention, that it's very important to elasticize your deposit books, because sometimes if we receive a lot of cash, it could be 2 inches thick. So what I do is I always put 2 elastics around the sides, and I also put one this way so that any cash or checks cannot fall out. You won't lose them that way on the way to the bank. So once you've documented and filled out all the envelopes for the funds that you received, it's very important to put that on a ledger sheet. Now this is a banker's box. It has the assembly financial records and the administrative records. So it's very important to keep this safe. As you can see, there's a file for absolutely everything. For the National, why the National? Well, for the National, we actually have a file because we receive contributions online, electronically, and those are transferred back to our assembly account, and I have to document those along with these as well. But as you can see, we have everything there: a file for CRA, certificate of insurance, GST, because whenever we pay for anything, we need to get a refund back from the government for any GST paid. City of Coquitlam, because we rent property from them. BC Council, because we send them money on a regular basis. There's a year-end checklist when it's time to do the audit. We also belong to the BC Society Annual. We have statements of assets and liabilities, invoices, earmarked fund bulletins, and everything else you can possibly think of. So that's our assembly financial records and administrative records. What we're going to do today, though, once you've filled out the contribution envelope with the various funds, the name and of the Bahai Feast, the name of the individual contributed, and so forth, those are all put together in this format. First of all, as you can see, it's for the feast number 18, Moke Dominion, and date of February the 7th, 2003. Contributions from the feast were 1,905. No name receipts were 105, and we've received online through the National, for people contributing online, 3,958, for a total of $5,968. So you can see the feast contributions are set up so it's for each month that is alphabetized here or numerically put in place. And I have an envelope already prepared for each of the month for the year. Now you can see for this particular one, it's the 18th feast, and it's for the Moke Dominion for a date of February the 7th, 2003. For that feast, we received $1,905 in contributions that are named, $105 with no names, and online for people who are contributing directly through the National Online program, $3,958, for a total of $5,968. Now this amount and these details have to be recorded on a ledger, and that's why we have to retain all of these receipts for every person who contributed funds to the faith. So it's recorded on a ledger, and when it comes time to do the audit, the auditor can verify the facts with how much was received by whom, with the actual total received into the ledger and then transferred to a general ledger. Okay, this ledger sheet is for feast number 1, March the 20th, 2023, Bahai Splendor. So we have the name up here, and it's important that you change this for every feast that you have or every fundraiser. If we put our cursor here, just opposite receipt, you can see how it appears up here as well. And by changing this is how we change that. So let's say we want to change it to 2, feast number 2. That's all we do. And when we finish, you can see it's now reappeared on the form down here. But for us, that's not the correct one. It is feast number 1. So we're going to go back there. And as you remember, we did document today and record that we did receive funds from 2 particular sources. And we're going to document that and put that on this sheet just for demonstration purposes today. So on the left-hand column, you can see it's for receipts. It's very important that you follow in sequence each feast by the last number of the last contributor from the last feast. So at the last feast, feast number 19, the last receipt would have been 189,449. So now we continue again with 189,450. If you punch that in there and you punch the second one in, you're then able to capture those and continue on down the line, and it'll automatically populate the numbers in sequence for you. Now, because we do receive some online as well, if we put the next number down there, you can see it would be 189,460. And you always need to have 2 in a row before you can capture them all. So 189,461. Now we capture both of those. And we go all the way down to the bottom of the sheet for those contributions we receive online, which normally have the names and the addresses all filled out, but just for confidentiality reasons, I remove them. Now you can see how the left column has actually populated all the numbers in sequence. Here is where we have the names, and as I said, I removed all those. You can see some of the postal codes and some of the contributions that are generated there. Now, let's go back to the ones we received today. So last name was Goldrick, so we're going to punch that in there. I always keep the capital on there. Seems to work well for me. First name Steve. The address, of course, 2109 Turnberry Lane. And Coquitlam V3C OE 3N3. Okay, so now we take a look at the sheet here. We can see that there was a $50 check received, but we have to allocate the funds for each one as they are designated on the sheet here as Mr. Goldrick wanted to contribute. So for the local fund, it was $200. And National Fund was $25. So we just tab over for each one of those. For the World Center Endowment Fund, it was $25 as well. And then it was the Shrine of Abdu'l-Baha and Community Properties Fund. So let's go over there. So CP Fund is a Community Properties Fund for $145. And the Shrine is just beside it, and that received $250. Now, that's, once we've done that, should automatically populate to the amount of funds that were actually contributed. The ledger sheet is designed with particular codes that you should not change unless you know what you're doing. So this total, for example, equals sum bracket G3 to T3. Well, let's have a look. So this is 3, so it would be G3, that's the column, to T3. So you can see it's alphabetized here, so it goes all the way over to T. So if I actually had funds going over to T, all of these particular blocks would be filled out. And the total, of course, would be different than 645. So now we've done the receipt for Mr. Goldrick. Now, because we did receive one that's a no name, we are now going down to the no name section and putting that in as well. So here I have a section for no name contributions. Now, maybe that we've received funds from another local spiritual assembly. In this particular case, I put in the New West Assembly because what they do is they share a portion of our storage with us and pay us X number of dollars per month. But I can't really give a receipt for that because it's not a fund contributions. It's actually a payment for a service. So For the first funds we received, it was $50, and because there was no name, we automatically give it to the local. Now you'll notice here that it didn't automatically populate in here. Now to remedy that situation, you can collect it this way as well, putting your cursor over 2 blocks, continue up to the third one, and you can see that the amount has populated. Also, in addition to that, this is line 15, and you can see it still has not populated, so there is a problem here. So we need to make sure that this is correct. So it would be G15, and actually it is G50. Oh, it's in the wrong column, that's why. So here's an error you can see. So this should not be in this column. It should be in the next column. Let's see if that remedies the situation. Yes, you can see how it populated over there automatically. So this column, of course, is just for the postal code, and so I'd accidentally put it there, but you can see it now works. So now you can see I have a total for no name contributions, and I have a total for feast contributions. Now here, of course, should I decide to put any particular person's name in here online, I could say, okay, here we're going to put Mr. Goldrick again. He's done a contribution. Actually, I do. So contribution online. So would be, my apologies, Goldrick, Steve again. So this is received through the national, and we're going to change the amount there to $150. Just fictitiously, of course, and you can see how it's populated over here automatically. So I'm going to highlight so that you know that I've done that contribution. I always highlight them, especially with the ones online, because I want to know that I've already done that one. And once they're all yellow, then I, of course, change it all to white again so that it's clear and easily read. Now, there may be situations, for example, where a particular person has not contributed online, and what we need to do in that particular case, their name has been here before, but now for the next month, or the Feast of Baha, they have not contributed. So I just go to one of those blocks with their name on it, and I go to delete sheet row. So when I hit that, it's automatically going to delete that entire row. So because that person didn't make a contribution online that particular month, and you can see the sheet automatically adjusted, took their name out, and left only those who contributed online for that particular month. Now, I'm going to continue on to the right-hand side of this page here, because it's important that you understand what it's used for. Now, the first section, of course, is all for cash. So I put CA for cash, but sometimes some of those contributions, as you can see here, would have been a check. So I always record the check number across from the person who's contributed it, because we want to know if it's cash received or check. Because should there be any discrepancy, that should be verified with the contribution envelope and also the deposit slip, because that check number also gets recorded on the deposit slip as well. But normally what I do is I change all of these in this column initially to cash, because normally they're all received in cash, and normally no name are also cash. So I mark those all CA. What you have at the bottom here is ONL, which represents online contributions. So that's how I distinguish the two. Now it's very important at the top here that we have the date correct. And it's not easy to replicate that on down the line, except by doing 2, then duplicating it, and then doing 4. For example, should I wish to change that to the 20th, I'm just going to change the date here to show you. That's now changed it over here. But in order to change this one, I must do the same. Now that I have 2, I can capture those 2. I Control C. And then I go down here to the next 2, Control V. And you can see it's populated that with the same particular date. Of course, it's very important when you see that flashing there with a broken line to escape from that, so it doesn't complicate or mess up your ledger sheet. Now that you have 4 done, you can actually capture 4. So Control C again, And it's much faster to do it this way, Control V. And you can see it's populated all of those. And I'm just going to escape here. But because the date really should be the 21st, I'm just going to go back under File here and back up a little bit so that all of this changes back to the way it was. Now you can see that it's all the same. So if you make a mistake, it's easy to go back with this cursor. Now, should your lines on this form or your names not be in sequence all the way down sequentially, you can always adjust it. For example, if I want these to be centered, I just do it that way. But I always like them to be on the left side of the column, and that's how you adjust that. You can add on, say you have 40 contributions and you need to increase the size of this. Well, you put your cursor on the last one and it will automatically fill in lines as you request them. So insert sheet row. Now watch this area. Notice when I did that, it added a row. I'm going to do it again for 2 or 3 more just to show you that it actually populates. When you do that though, you have to remember you have to follow this all the way down so those also have number. You also have to follow these down so that these are also filled out. And you also have to do the same with these because you want them to automatically populate. And if you do it that way, they will populate, as you can see, right? And don't forget also to do your cash the same and your dates, right? There we go. And we should be able to do this as well. Let's see if we can. And it did. So we automatically brought that down as well, which is what should happen at the top of the page when you change anything in any case. So I think we've gone through this form as much as we can. But now let's take a look at the bottom because that's very important. These amounts are automatically populated for what was received for feast contributions. Now, this, as you can see from this here, starts from G25 to G54. Okay, let's see if that's true. Well, it ends at 54, and we are in G column, and it does start at 25. Because all of these amounts are in here, that automatically populates. But this could be the wrong code. Let's see, it should be 2554. This says 2554. Now, if these are all incorrect amounts for the columns, you can actually capture these two sideways and it'll automatically go right across to the bottom. And it'll populate all of them for you automatically. For this one, of course, it could be populated and calculated vertically, or it could be calculated horizontally. So we could do U25 to U54, and that would have the correct amount down here. Or we could do G54, G56, to T56, and that should have the correct amount there. And you can see this particular amount here is not correct. Look, if you see the amounts here, they're all wrong. So let's take a look at the code. It says U3 to U7. We definitely know that's not the right code. So if we're going horizontally across this way, it would be G3, G3 to T3. And T, so it's carrying it all the way over, G-H-I-J-K, all the way over to T, and that should give us the correct amount there. And it has not. So something is wrong here. This should be T50. This is wrong too. It should be all totally on this line here. So it should be G56. So we go back again, G56 to T56. And that should be the correct amount. Let's see if it goes. Yeah, so that is the correct amount there. It's $2,898 because we have the proper code in there always remember the code itself establishes what area of the page you're collecting from. So 25 to 54, in this case, we're going horizontally across the page, so it would be always 56. So it would be G56 to T56, and then that would populate in there automatically. And the same for no name contributions. You can see it's 50. It's obviously correct. And you can see at the bottom here, that's correct as well, except that it's all fictitious. Now, this particular one is for the fees contributions at top. This one is for the online contributions, and then we should have a total at the bottom. Well, if you've been following along, you'll notice that we do not have fees contributions of these amounts. So let's find out what is wrong. Our fees contributions are here, and we only know that we do actually have one contribution for a total of $645. So that's actually what should appear here. So this column is for fees contributions, should be G3 to T3. So you can see it actually totaled $645. We don't actually have any here, so there shouldn't be any there either. So, but that is an H column, so we're going to correct that to H3. H3 to T3. That didn't work out either. Let me just go back here. Now we're going to backtrack here a moment and go out of this file and go into our ledger for a moment. Current ledger. Okay. All right. Now, this is a much more complicated ledger document and must be very critically documented and in detail and carried through all the way from one side to another one. You'll notice this one actually has two ledger sheets and actually three. Okay, dear friends, so as you can see, we have the Feast of Alla Loftiness here, feast number 19. And you can see that we have our general contributions, no name contributions, and of course, online contributions. Now what we're going to do is we're going to transfer all of this information to the receipts ledger. So first of all, I'm just going to minimize this and then go to my desktop and pull up the receipt template. The receipt template is what we're going to use to merge the feast document so we can print off receipts. So you can see with this document, it also is designed with codes. So for example, if I punch it on the date, date equals AC2, that's just written, but here it merges with the ledger sheet. The receipt number, it also has a special code. And certainly the name, proper name, first and last name, the address, town, postal code, and if it's given in memory of someone else. You can see on the right-hand side of that, of course, you can see all the various funds are listed here. So whatever has been recorded on the ledger sheet will also appear here. There's 3 to a page, but it will populate them all with whatever I put in this column here. So I'll first capture from the tax receipt to the check number or cash from the other one, and we'll paste it here. So here you can see I still have my feast number 19. Once I pull that up, I capture all these 4 over to the end, to there, and then I do Control C. So I've captured it all. I go back to the other document and I paste it in the first column. And you can see it's all populated automatically all the way to the other side. And you can even see the feast receipt, the receipt as well, has been documented. Here you can see the official receipt numbers, the names, total contributions, and so forth. And then you can see the second one, it also has been populated, and so forth, all the way down the line. Now normally this is good until the 17th sheet, which should give you about 51 contribution receipts, but you have to check them very carefully. So for example, if I want to print this now, I go to File, and I will check the first two. So I'll punch in Print. It'll bring me up the sheet. Now if I go to the bottom here, you can see it's 1 to 84 sheets. I need to check page 2. So you can see it's only populated here because I've only collected a total of 4 contributions. So the other 2 will not populate, or those afterwards. So I do not want to print more than 2 pages. So here I only print 1 copy, but I will go from page 1 to page 2. Otherwise it will print 84 pages of blanks or receipts, and we don't want to waste that. Get the right printer here, of course, and now you can see we can print those off. And all we have to do here is punch print. Now we do have perforated receipt sheets, so all you have to do is tear them apart. It makes life a lot easier when you're doing receipts. It's so important to do these receipts at the end of each Bahai month. Now you won't really be able to do that till halfway through the next month because we don't receive the nationals information or contributions until about a week later after our feast. So it'll probably take a month and a half before you get it all done. But the reality is that we need to make sure we're on top of this. These are all printed. So for example, we're just going to print these 2 documents right now and see what it looks like. And then I'll show you where they have a receipt box. And that's where all of the receipts that I have printed go. It's all been alphabetized so that if there's a name there like Goldrick, that would go under G. And there should be an envelope, a window envelope that shows, for example, my name. Let me check here. Yeah, you can see. And what I do is keep the envelope open like this, so I never have to open the envelope again. And I put the last receipt at the back of the envelope. When it comes time to mail these out, all of course we need to do is seal them, stamp them, and then send them away. Now I don't do that until the end of the year because it's just a waste of money and stamps that come from the fund, and I really don't want to do that. So that's how that works. Now let's take a look at these. These ones I printed, and there are only 4 of them. And because I did not print them on perforated paper, I have to cut them out individually, which is no problem at all because there's only a few here. Generally, I have a cutter for this type of thing, but because we have perforated paper, we don't need to do this at all. So let me take the first one here. It's under the name of Rizvan Sanai. So I go to S, and I find her envelope. And because it should be in alphabetical order, it should be easy to find. But sometimes 1 or 2 may be out of line. So I can see there's none there for her at this point in time. So I'll put it in a new envelope and then file it under the same in more or less alphabetical order. ASAB, SAK, SAN. So that's how that would work. I'm best to take this out right now because I'm not really printing these at this particular time because that ledger document that lists all of the contributions is not finished yet. As you can see, I still have addresses to populate. Populate in here, so I haven't finished. I still have to put those addresses that are missing in this document. So until then, I will not actually print or file any of those, but I just wanted you to see how it works. Now, you can capture as many as you want, but keep in mind, if it only goes down to 7 or 17, that's all you can print at one time. So let's capture a few more. Go over to the receipt, punch that in too. Now, you always have to remember, you have to go right over to this column. Now, we're going to replace all those because we kind of did that, or we can add to them right here. And you can see the whole thing's populated all the way down with all of the contributions that have been made. Now, this document will automatically fill out, as mentioned before, all of those contributions, and all that's necessary to be done is to actually print them. And that's all that's necessary. So that finishes up the tax receipts, how you merge the feast document for contributions to the receipt document. Okay, it's a great idea to make sure that you bookmark places you need to go. For example, you need to go to the national site to obtain all of the online contributions. So this is only for treasurers, of course. And here is where I punch in my already email address. So first of all, you go to Manage Funds, drop down, and slide slowly across. Be careful you don't miss a line. And you'll need to print two things: contributions by date and contributions summary. So when we go to the summary, you can see that so far this year, it says we've contributed 15,076, but we want the actual contributions for the month. Our loftiness, we need to look at the last one. So for the month of number 18, Moken Dominion, it ended on the 1st of March. So we do a drop down to March and then punch in the next date. So which would be the 2nd of March, and probably until the 20th of March. And then we ask for a display. That should display all the contributions for that particular month. But let's see if it's the correct amount. And the way to verify that is go to your bank statement and see if that's correct. So we know that these dates are wrong. When we take a look at it here, and this is always a way to check what you've done, we haven't punched in the proper date. So it is April and it should be March. So you have to backtrack here a moment and go to the proper date, and it should be March 20th. Now display that and let's see if it's the correct amount. 3649 is correct. Now we want to print this. So all we do is go to print, check to see what it looks like. And I always do 2 copies. One copy that's attached to the monthly contributions that are also individualized and printed, and one copy for the national file. So that's how we access the online contributions. Now we're going to backtrack here a minute and show you how we collect the individual contributions. So the summary was contribution summary, but we need the individual ones and we need to print those as well. Now we must punch in the same dates. March again, March 2nd to March 20th, and then display those. We can see it's the same amount again, but there are a whole number of contributions individually listed. So you can see as we go on down the sheet, there are actually 3. Now what we really have to be careful with here is that when these are printed, it will maybe miss the last one on this sheet and or the first one on this sheet. So we have to check them very carefully once they're printed and add those in manually. Otherwise, you're not going to have a balanced online contribution sheet. So you can see it's printed at the bottom, same amount as the contribution summary. You just have to be careful because it prints so close to the bottom, it's going to skip 1 or 2 per page. All right. So then, of course, we print 2 copies of that. One that goes in the feast contribution file, and one that goes with the individual monthly contributions with a copy of the Nationals summary as well. So that's basically it for the accessing the online contributions. Now we're going to go out of there for a moment and we're going to go to personal banking. So it's very important because you need to know what's been deposited from the national into the account. Once you have that figure, you can then calculate how far or what date you really have to go down according to the beginning and the end of every Bahai month to find the right amount. And they both must match. So you punch in your card number here, you punch in your password here, and then you go on down. It brings you up a sheet. I don't know if I should do this right away, but let me try. So you can see this is taken us to the automatic electronic bank account. You can see how much funds are there. What we would like to do is see the account details. Now you can actually print those, but you have to decide how long you wanted to print for. So we can go back in here and we can see the amount that was transferred for the month of Allah. Loftiness was actually the same amount as we checked on the national level, which is $3,649. Now you can print those. You can also print those on a monthly basis as well. So you could actually have a sheet, and I do that. I put the monthly summaries into the file, and I make sure that those balance with my checkbook. Okay, friends, now we're going to go to the check writing area. Now, we get printed each year 100 or 200 checks from the bank or through the bank. They're all numbered with the name of the assembly on it. As you can see here, we've written a check number 1991 to Steve Goldrick, who has paid for Coquitlam City rentals for children's classes. And of course, the invoices are all documented here, but since I paid for them on my Visa card, I had to reimburse Steve for those, a total of $205.58. Once you received your bank statement and have it balanced, you know how much money you have in your account at one time and can transfer that here as a summary. Once you've issued the check, you can then balance that at the bottom here and carry that through to the next check, which was made to make space 3 months self-storage. We pay $297.41 every month. Now, if there have been deposits in between time, it's so important to add those deposits to the amount of the last balance minus the check you wrote, which gives us a total of $11,236.53. Now, normally for our assembly, we have 3 signing officers with the bank, and that has to change if the officers change yearly. But in this particular case, I normally get the friends like this officer, Feribor Safais. I've asked him to sign 10 checks for me. If he's not available, I will get the next signing officer, who happens to be our secretary, Roya Asravan. And this prepares me because I normally write quite a few checks a month for all of the expenses that are incurred. It may be for a celebration, it may be to the city for rental spaces, it could be for some expense that this assembly have authorized, but I need to make sure that it get paid on time. So making sure that the deposits are in on time, I must also make sure that bills are paid on time, and I pay those right away. That's about it for the checking process.